Alrighty, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. For those of you that did not catch our morning sessions today, my name is Brad Wolfenden. I'm the director of cyber sports here at Cat's Eye Play Cyber, and I am here tonight to moderate our wonderful guest speaker, Miss Rita Allen. And before we introduce Rita, just wanted to remind you all of what we have going on this week. So there are still 2 more days of our Ignite Cyber Career Lunch and Learn sessions. Tomorrow is Tuesday, September 24th. We will be covering the topic of scholarships and funding. And then Wednesday, we will jump into landing your first blank. And that'll focus on everything from apprenticeships to internships to entry-level jobs. And those run from 11:30 a.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern time. As well, all of these sessions are being recorded and they'll be posted back to Brella. So if you're not catching this live or aren't able to catch a future session live, certainly tune into Brella, watch those recorded videos and engage with some of your peers and the guest speakers through their virtual booths and through the chat function in Brella. In addition to the Lunch and Learn sessions, we are hosting a series of guest speakers in the evening times for our career chats, and that's why we're here this evening. So tonight, as I mentioned, we have Rita joining us, and I will introduce her next. Tomorrow, we will have a panel discussion that will focus in on that same topic, funding and scholarships, and representatives there will be joining us from SANS GIAC, from Scholarships for Service, from the Last Mile Education Fund, and from the DoD Cyber Skills Academy, talking a lot about various pathways into cybersecurity and the financial aid that's available to you all in pursuit of cybersecurity education or experience, ultimately leading to a role in the field. Wednesday will close out the same theme for Wednesday night as Wednesday's Lunch and Learn, that is landing your first blank. We'll have 2 folks from our partners and sponsors. One, Miss Katie Boudreau from MasterCard. She will be covering some internship opportunities with MasterCard. I know many of them have recently launched for applications heading into 2025. And then following Katie, we will have Dr. Atik Kao from Raytheon and Nightwing talking all about their apprenticeship, internship, and early career opportunities there with Raytheon and Nightwing. Our evening sessions run from 8:30 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. Eastern time each night. And without further ado, I would love to have Miss Rita Allen join me on stage for tonight's Ignite Your Cyber Career Chat. Rita tonight will be covering personal branding and marketing yourself. So we heard earlier from Margot and from Taylor. Third time's the charm here with Rita. Rita is the president of Rita B. Allen Associates. And Rita, whenever you're ready, it is all you. Thanks for joining us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am going to just take a quick moment to share my screen. But this is a topic that I absolutely love to talk about. I never get tired of talking about. And quite honestly, no matter what level of your career you are, whether you're starting, as many of you are, or you're mid-career, or you're even seasoned in your career, this is a topic that is a topic we have to always have front and center and think about when we think about managing our careers, and that is branding ourselves, personal branding and marketing ourselves. So as we kick off this topic, I want to ask you all to just take a moment and maybe close your eyes or get out a piece of paper and jot down some notes, but take a moment to fast forward to the year 2034. I know that seems like a long time away, but 10 years out, and you've been invited to speak at a cybersecurity conference, maybe this conference itself, this event here, because of your accomplishments. And so what does that vision look like for you? What do you want to be known for? When you think ahead like that, what kind of stories do you want to tell? What do you want your brand to be? So take a quick moment. And as I said, maybe close your eyes, jot down a couple of thoughts. And I'm going to give you a minute of silence to do that. this is something that just will start to maybe percolate in your minds right now, and something to think about throughout the week as you're thinking about your career in cybersecurity and what that might look like. But the important part of this too is that you want to take some notes and take some reflection. And the reason that I like to start with this exercise is when we think about our careers, you want to think of it as a journey. So what's the destination point? Where do you see yourself down the road? And if you give some thought like that, then you can start planning the roadmap for how will I get there. And I know that this might be very hard to do. I find a lot of people find it challenging because they're thinking about, what am I going to even do in the next 12 months, never mind 10 years from now? But it's a good exercise to think about and to kind of challenge ourselves when we think about planning our careers. And again, whether you're just starting out or throughout all phases of your career. And what I also encourage you to do is throughout the next hour, please share your comments and or questions in the chat, because we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If some of you do already have a vision that you thought of and or some thoughts around this question, please share it in the chat box, and it will be great to hear some of your reflections on this. And I guess the next question is, how many of you found that to be difficult? And if so, what makes it difficult for you? Or did any of you find that easy? And the key question is, do we know our value? I mean, that's the one thing you want to start asking yourself, because we're all so different. We all have different strengths and different skill sets and different aspirations. And we really want to get intimate with all of that, so that you're thinking about your value add, how you make a difference, the worth that you have, and start to formulate, what is my personal brand? What is that differentiator? And how do I stand out? And the important part of having a vision like that, as I said, it's like going on a trip. You want to have a journey, you want to have a destination point, and then you can plan your journey, your roadmap of how will I get there? And you want to think of your career in that way. So let's bring it back to today, 2024. And for all of these reasons here that you see, it's such a important part of planning your career and managing your career to really understand how you set yourself apart and be able to market that when you're looking for an internship, even when you're in school and you're working on different maybe projects at school or different teams that you're on. Knowing your differentiator, the value you bring, is really critical. And when you look at the marketplace in terms of the workforce, these are all, the economy is something we can never predict and something we can't control. We're in a virtual and hybrid workplace now. There's a whole new normal in the marketplace that we're all still adjusting to. It's a very competitive marketplace too, and especially in your field, in the cybersecurity field. We have seen in the last 4 years, all of us, whether you're in school or you're in the workforce, we had to be agile. We had to deal with so much change, and we had to be resilient. And right now, the demographics in our workforce is changing. We have 5 generations in the workforce today, all working together with different expectations and different motivations, different aspirations, different needs. And it's a global marketplace. And everyone is expected to have some leadership skills. You don't have to be in a leadership role to be a leader. And I'm sure many of you in your classes, in your classrooms, in your sports, in your communities, you have had some leadership experiences. And we want to be not just generalists, but have some specialized skills. And most importantly, we've got to be adaptive and be able to deal with and manage change and build relationships. Relationships are a really key part of managing our careers. And so for all of these reasons, now more than ever, it really is important to know what our personal brand is, what that differentiator is. And if you have some thoughts, it would be interesting to add what your thoughts are on how do you define personal brand? What does that mean to you? And it really is about, how do other people see you? How are you received? How are you perceived? How do you set yourself apart? And what are some of those differentiators that you have that make you who you are, that make you good at what you do? And once you know that, are you diligent and intentional about how you market what your differentiator is? And do you know what you've accomplished? And, again, I think whether you are starting your career, your mid-level career, or you are further in your career, these are questions we always have to ask ourselves and be ready to answer. And when we think about marketing our accomplishments too, we have to be very strategic about when we market them, with who, and how we market them. And I bet you all already have some experience doing this, because you had to do all this when you applied to get into the schools that you're in, when you have applied for jobs that you've had, and or internships. This whole week, as you are meeting and interacting and networking, these are things to consider and ways that you also will be marketing yourself. I love this quote. I'm a big quote person. And building a brand means knowing your story and building and sharing that story. And a lot of really what branding is really about being a good storyteller. And we're going to talk a little bit about storytelling in a bit. But start to shift your mind to think of that. Again, building a brand means knowing your story and then being able to build and share that story. As I said earlier, we all have something that is unique about us. Sometimes I think people think a brand is something that is so extraordinary, that nobody else has. It's a skill that nobody else has, and it's actually, quite honestly, it's the opposite of that. It's really about what sets you apart, what makes you you, because we are all unique. Sometimes we may have very unique skill sets that others don't have, but sometimes it's more about our style or our personality or characteristic or our approach that really makes us stand out and makes us kind of that anchor that really allows you to be your best authentic self in everything that you do. And, your brand is something that, yes, you build on, yet it's something that you develop pretty early on, and knowing what that differentiator is and what is the uniqueness that you bring. And that really is a very simple way of looking at personal brand. Your personal brand is what differentiates you from others, what allows you to be your best authentic self. So if you look at this page here, the slide, if you look at all of these folks, you can probably say in maybe one or two words what they are known for. They have all done a really good job of building their brand. And, sometimes they've maybe reinvented themselves. But yet that core anchor for them, what that brand was, is something that they've always built on. And I'm sure you all know people in your own lives. I was impressed when I was doing some research to see who has a great brand in your space, in the cybersecurity space. And I learned about Jen Easterly, that I've got a picture up here, including her too. And very interesting background that she has. And she has really built a brand as an expert in this field. And so that's what you want to think about is, what do you want to be known for? And what is it about you that makes you uniquely you, that helps you to be your best authentic self? So one thing I've learned throughout my career, and my career has been in the field of human resources for many years. And what I've learned, that there's three commonalities that successful professionals share. Number one is that they really know their value add. They know their worth, what they have to offer. And number two, they know what they want. They are goal oriented. There's been studies that have been done indicating when we are very intentional about setting goals, we are 50% more likely to achieve them. That was a study done by Dominican University. And we want to have those goals. Just like I said earlier, what's that 10-year vision? We want to have goals. You want to have that long-term mission and vision for your career with specific long-term goals, and then also some short-term goals that will help you in achieving some of those long-term goals as well. And goals are meant to be revisited. I like to say plan, 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 and then go with the flow. Because sometimes, yes, we have a journey planned out for ourselves, and you may have some goals set. And then along the way, you might find that, okay, this is the route I'm following, the path I'm following. Sometimes there's detours you didn't expect. Sometimes there's roads that close that you didn't expect. Sometimes there's new roads that open up that you didn't expect. For example, I was a business major and had a career in human resources. And I've had my own executive coaching firm and career coaching for the last 20 years. And several years ago, I was asked to write an article, which kind of scared me. And I've learned that if something scares me, I should do it, because that usually means it's going to challenge me and get me to push out of my comfort zone. And I wrote, someone asked me to write an article, so I wrote an article. I was, not a writer, but I found that it was a topic that was an area that I had some expertise. And then after that, I was asked to write another article and another and another. And then before I knew it, I had published all these articles. And then a client challenged me and said, you should write a book. And I thought, a book? No, that's not my strength. And I found that that was a challenge that I was ready to take on. And then fast forward a few years later, and I published a book on this topic of personal branding and marketing yourself. So even though I had very specific goals for my career, I never saw writing as one of them. But that was a door that opened for me, a path that I didn't expect, but I pursued it. And then I found that it actually uncovered a talent I didn't realize I had, and added a whole new other portfolio to my career that I did not expect. So have your goals, and yet always revisit them and stay open to unexpected opportunities and possibilities that may come your way. But make sure you do have goals, being goal-oriented. And then number 3, they know how to ask for it. Successful professionals can advocate for themselves effectively. And here's the thing, these 3 all go hand in hand. You have to know what you have to offer, you have to know what you want, and then you want to know how to ask for it. But you've got to do your homework. Sometimes there are people that know what they have to offer, but they haven't done the planning around, but what do I really want? So then how you ask for it will not be effective. And then sometimes there's people who really know what they want, yet they haven't done their homework around, okay, but what do I have? What do I have to bring to offer? So it's really important that we master these 3. Knowing what you offer, knowing what you want, and then practicing how you advocate for yourself and not being afraid to do that and not to hold back. So this concept, it really is about owning your career. And it's an important competency for all stages. This is something, so I love talking to where you are all now in your careers, because this is something you want to do early on and get in the routine of doing these practices throughout your career. And because this is a way of owning your career, really being in the driver's seat rather than sitting in the back going along for the ride. And it requires a lot of self-awareness, doing a lot of self-exploration and self-assessment and self-reflection, and asking for help along the way too, so that you build that inner strength. And this way you are empowered to manage your career. And it's a process that you want to engage in on an ongoing basis, not just when you're ready to look for a job, but always, even when you're gainfully employed, and making sure you're marketing yourself within your company as well as within your industry. So how do we do this? So what I like to offer is what I call the 3 Ps marketing technique. And this includes, number 1, preparation, which helps you to identify and define your brand. The next P is packaging, which is then about creating and building your brand. And then number three is presentation, which is all about articulating and enhancing your brand. And this is a cumulative process. So in other words, your prep is foundational. If you don't put the proper amount of time into your preparation, then your packaging will not be as effective. And if you don't put enough time into your prep and your packaging, then your presentation will not be as effective. So you want to see it as cumulative. So let's walk through each of these in a little more detail. Preparation, this is what I like to refer to as your personal due diligence, which is really about stepping back and doing a good amount of self-reflection and self-assessment. So this is everything from knowing what your values are. What are your top 5 values? You know, values are so fundamental to our vitality. And a lot of times when we feel some sort of a conflict or something doesn't feel aligned, it usually has to do with your values, maybe not being aligned with the situation or the leader or the role. And sometimes, you know, that may happen. It's not that we're always going to have 100% of our values aligned. However, the awareness to know that maybe competition isn't a high value for you, but maybe now you're working for a leader who that is a high value for them. So you can manage that by saying, all right, I understand that maybe I'm making a compromise here, but this is what I'm going to gain. Maybe you're going to learn different skill sets by being in that situation. But first and foremost, you have to know what your values are and what's most important to you. What are those must-haves that are critical for you? Also, self-assessment, personal due diligence includes stepping back and saying, what do I really like? What am I good at? What do I not like? What am I not good at? What are my goals and aspirations, as we talked about? And having that vision and mission for your career, the long-term expectations, as well as some of those short-term plans for yourself, and setting some very specific goals for yourself. It also means doing some inventory around what are your motivations and interests and characteristics and strengths and weaknesses, limitations, all of that. And also, in addition to your own assessment, you want to ask for feedback from other people. Ask for feedback from your classmates, from teachers, professors, from of course any supervisors you've worked for, coaches that you've worked with. Your friends and family, you know, people see different sides of us in different aspects of our world. So you want to take the time to ask for feedback as well. And so that when you go through this process, and there's a couple of worksheets that I believe are on the website that you can access that will help you with this. A personal due diligence worksheet. And then once you do all of this self-assessment, then it can help you to start to determine what is my value add? What are my differentiators? And often, you know, it's a very simple, your brand statement can be very simple. I remember working with a client once, and she said her brand statement is, I get stuff done. And she said it with such pride and conviction. You know, another brand statement for someone could be like people that I've worked with, that this one other individual, his brand statement was that he was an analytical problem solver. So it's understanding what your differentiators are. And when you do this kind of personal due diligence, it can help you do that. And last but not least, a part of our preparation is being very intentional, strategic about what kind of a network do we have, and really focus on building relationships. This is such a, you know, relationships can make or break careers. And a lot of times people will put their heads down and really focus on the work, which of course is important. And in addition to that, you've got to put your head up and make sure that you're connecting with people, you're building relationships, you're a resource to people, you have a strong network. People start to know who you are and the kind of value that you add. So this is, all of these pieces are a part of our preparation. And a couple of suggestions I have is journaling. Journaling is a great way to also do some self-reflection. And this whole week, you may want to practice some journaling. Just what do you learn about yourself? What excites you? What are some things that you don't like? Or what are some things you find challenging or frustrating? Journaling is a great way to do some self-exploration. And what's very compelling about journaling and powerful is when you do it for an extended period of time, you end up seeing some patterns that emerge that really can be quite enlightening. So that's the prep part. So I want to take a moment here and ask you to think about, hey, if I asked you, what's the one word that you would use to describe yourself? What would that word be? And then the follow-up question is, what's one word others would describe you? And so as you talk to people and network through this week, you might want to practice that. You might want to practice sharing. What's the one word you would use to describe yourself? Maybe as you're introducing yourself to people. For example, one word I use to describe myself is I am very authentic and approachable. Kind of what you see is what you get. What's the one word others would use to describe me? I would say that they probably would say the same thing. And also to say that I'm very helpful to them as well. So think about that. And this is a good way to start to get comfortable because you also want to be comfortable sharing about yourself. And so take a moment right now, if you haven't already, and write down one word you would use to describe yourself. And if you'd like, feel free to share it in the chat. And what's the one word others would use to describe you? So I don't know, Brad, if there's anything that you see in the chat that you would like to share, I'm happy to take a moment to do that. If we see any folks chatting.
Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of questions that have come in. Haven't seen many responses yet on the one word question, but I'm sure they'll roll in. But if you don't mind, I have one or two questions that I can kind of lob your way from your first couple.
Absolutely.
Okay. One of them that has come in that I really liked was, how do you recommend practicing how to advocate for yourself? Say, for instance, I want more flexible work hours.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great question. And well, I'm going to answer that specifically in terms of like if you're talking about how to advocate for more flexible work hours. One thing I would suggest is thinking about like what will be the benefit for, I assume you're advocating to your manager. So making your case in a way that they see how it will benefit them. So in other words, will you be more productive because it's less time traveling or less time doing XYZ, or what's the end result? What is the outcome that will benefit your manager as well, or that will make you more productive or higher performing. And in terms of, I think your question said, how do you practice that? And that actually is the best way is you have to practice. Like, sometimes you want to just get comfortable making the ask. And so maybe you start with smaller things that maybe aren't as difficult to ask for, and then build up to that. And then another piece of advocating for yourself in general is to be a good storyteller. And I'm going to talk about storytelling in a bit. So I will talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point. But yeah, I do think that you want to practice and just get comfortable making the ask. And one thing to ask yourself is always, what's the worst that can happen? Will they say no? Okay, well, I mean, it's what's worse if you don't ask and you could have gotten a yes, or you do ask and you get a no. So, it's good to at least make the ask. But in making the ask, you do want to build a case that is compelling to your manager, so that they see there is value and the outcome will be a positive, a win-win.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I love that answer. I think in most cases, especially with this example, bosses or superiors love an employee that's proactive and thinking about the benefit to the organization, more of a problem solver than bringing problems to the table. So I love that. And then one more question, and I do see a couple of other responses to the slide on the screen, but I'm going to squeeze in one more question based off of your last slide about branding specifically. How do we refresh or build on our brands to get more growth opportunities? And this may be something that you speak to coming up here in the presentation as well.
Yes, I will speak a little bit more about that when we talk about the packaging, because that's really about making sure that people know. It's like once you determine, like once you are able to identify what your brand is, now you want to start to build it. And that is what I'm going to go right into next. So maybe that's a segue.
Yeah. And a couple of words that people have thrown out just for your own knowledge: integrity, tenacious, positive, team player. I'm seeing quite a few of them come in that I really like. All great qualities for sure, and things that one should be proud of to kind of use to describe yourself or to have others describe you by.
Yeah, excellent. I love it. And I would encourage everyone, keep that word, like wherever you wrote it down, hang on to it, because often when you are sort of forced to think of one word, somehow I'm going to say that it's probably related, somehow linked to your brand. Because when you're under the gun and you have to, that's why I love to have people answer this question. Usually it's that go-to. So come back to that. After you do some due diligence, you might find that that was a very telling word for you. And and just like the second question that you had, Brad, that really is, it's about finding your best authentic self and now building your brand around that. So how do we do that? So the packaging is the next. Once we and let me just reinforce and emphasize that prep part is really hard. It takes a lot of time and effort and digging deep into yourself and being intimate and really being honest with yourself. But it's a great process. Like once you get through that process, now it's okay. How do we now build and create and build our brand? So number one, you've got to have a strong portfolio. So in other words, always have an updated resume. Not just when you're looking for a job. Actually, the worst time to write a resume is when you're looking for a job. You want to keep your resume updated, current at all times. And also you want to have a bio, like a shorter. And of course, now in this, 2024 with social media, you want to have a strong social media presence, and you want to make sure that your personal brand is reflected in your resume as well as your social media presence. And for at the very least, LinkedIn, that is the professional platform where you want to have a real robust profile and be selective with what social media you use. And just remember that once you're out there, whatever you put out there, it is out there. Employers, universities, anywhere that is looking at you for any reason whatsoever, they are looking on social media first. So make sure whatever you put out there in every platform, whether personal or professional, that it reflects your personal brand and reflects you in a positive way. And so part of using social media, also, you want to be very strategic. This is where you want to do your homework around what is your track record? What is, in other words, what is everything you've accomplished? All of those projects you worked on, teams you've been on, things that you're really proud of that you have been a part of achieving, whether it was in school or at work, in your community, if you volunteer. I mean, there's so many facets. You think of yourself holistically, and what is your track record? And that's the kind of thing you want to, put out there, whether it's on your resume, on social media. You want to be active in different associations in your industry. I mean, clearly you're all a part of this week, which says that you're already doing that. And what you do put out there, you want it to be thought leadership so that people see your subject matter expertise. What kinds of specialties do you have? What kinds of skills do you have? Experiences. If you like to write, blog. I mean, you can write blogs and get it out there all the time. And if you have an opportunity to be on a committee or to serve in some sort of a board, to be, to lead on a team, these are all ways that you are building your track record. And also to stay well read in your field, to also continue to build your credentials, whether it's continuous training, advanced learning, and credentials, and education, knowledge. What you want to do is build on your brand, that people think of you when they see your feet, when they think of your field, so that you are seen as a thought leader and a subject matter expert. You want to be a resource to other people. You want to be of service. You want people to see you as someone who's a go-to that can help them. And last but not least, you want to have very strong alliances. That network I talked about, you want to continue to build on that. And you want to include in that some strategic alliances, such as mentors. You want to have mentors, be a mentor to others. You want advocates for you. You want sponsors. You want trusted advisors. You want to have your own sort of board of directors. You also want to have sponsors and champions and advocates that will be there for you and help you along the way. And be that for other people. You've got to remember, it's a give and take, and it's all not just about what you get, but what you give. And I like to say that's really what branding is all about. It's how are you of service to people? How do people receive you? How do you make a difference? What's your impact? And do people see you as a resource? What do they say about you when you're not in the room? What's our reputation? How do we add value? How do we make a difference? That is all about our brand. And we want to be deliberate about how we package ourselves, and build that brand. You want to keep a running list of everything you've accomplished. You want to keep performance appraisals. You want to, when someone gives you a compliment or a testimonial, keep all that. So you're kind of keeping your personal scrapbook of all these positives, and that's part of your packaging. And then when we do our prep and our packaging, then we move into our presentation, and this is about our messaging and our impact. And this is really about that practice. You know how you said, practice making the ask. Well, we also want to practice talking about what you've achieved. And so when you do that, your prep and your packaging, that all those accomplishments, all those skills, the value add, all that you have achieved, that becomes your script, if you will. Not that you recite it as a script, but that's sort of the content and the inventory that you then use to talk about yourself and all that you have achieved. And that's the marketing piece. That's how you market yourself. And you truly do want to practice. Practice being a storyteller. Practice sharing what you've achieved, the value that you bring, and making that ask. And it's about being out there, being visible, connecting with people, putting yourself in a position to meet people and to share those stories when the opportunity presents itself. I have a great example to share with that. When I was presenting once to the Society of Women Engineers, a young engineer came up to me afterwards and she said, I see exactly what you're talking about. She was at a lunch that was a department lunch, and she was with lots of people that she doesn't work with daily, however, are still part of her department, the whole engineering department. And the VP of the engineering department was there. And so he came up to her. She had been there about 2 years, right out of college. And he asked her, he said, so what's been your favorite project that you worked on? And what would you like to be working on, down the road, say in the next couple of years? And she said, I froze. I didn't know, she hadn't done her prep. She hadn't thought about, yes, what are the projects I've worked on? What is it that I'm proud of? What have I accomplished? What do I want to do? What are my goals, short-term, long-term? And that's the kind of situation that if the opportunity presents itself, you want to be ready to advocate for yourself. You want to be ready to make that ask. Sometimes you may initiate the ask yourself. Sometimes, an opportunity presents itself. And that's why you always want to be ready and able to be your own advocate. And this takes practice, practice getting comfortable sharing your stories and talking about yourself and what you've achieved. And it isn't always just about us. Usually our stories include other people as well. And you want to see it as advocating for yourself and practicing. And I say practice on family, practice on friends, practice just recording yourself. And, to the participant who asked about, making the ask even for more flexible work schedule, make your case and then practice, say it, record yourself, or practice on a friend, ask for feedback. And the more we get comfortable talking about ourselves, making the ask, sharing our stories, the more effective it is, so that eventually it becomes second nature. But trust me, it is not easy for everyone. And most of us, it's not easy for. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. However, you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to do your prep and your packaging. And then this is how it all comes together, the presentation. And you have the confidence and that positive energy that really is coming through, that enthusiasm and the self-assurance around who you are, what you want, and being able to ask for it. A lot of another quote I love to share, as I said, it's more about how we show up for other people when we think about brand. And so one of my favorite women she always had incredible words of wisdom. And this one, I think, has always stayed with me. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. When you think about personal brand, that's what it is. What's the impact that you have, the difference that we make, and how do people receive us? So and any other questions, Brad, before I move on to the storytelling?
I think there were a couple of questions, but you kind of knocked them out with your continued dialogue over the last couple of minutes. One was specifically just around tips and tricks for networking, especially as a newbie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is such an important networking, especially because you want to be authentic and make it your own. So what I mean by that, like some people are very comfortable just talking to anybody and walking into a room and meeting people, and they like large crowds. Other people prefer small crowds. Other people prefer one-on-one, deeper connections. And so what I always like to stress with networking too is make it your own. Like, stretch yourself out of your comfort zone, push yourself in ways that maybe, is stretching you. However, do it in a way that you stay authentic. So if you prefer smaller group settings, do one-on-one coffees or Zoom meetings, or another way is you can connect people to other people. Another way to be a great networker is to, if you see an article that someone that you think would really be interested in reading it, send it to them. So there's so many ways we can network. It isn't always just maybe that traditional way of meeting someone for lunch or getting together. There's so many ways of networking. And the important thing there is make it your own, so that you don't try to put a square peg in a round hole, but that you really feel authentic about how you're doing it, yet stretch yourself so you're doing more of it and in a very intentional and deliberate way. So just to talk a little bit about storytelling, because we do want to become a good storyteller. I find most often people are much more comfortable sharing a story about something that they've accomplished rather than that question of, oh, tell me about yourself, versus tell me about something you accomplished that you're really proud of. And that's where our prep and our packaging come in handy, because that's when you've done the homework and now you're ready and you've practiced your storytelling. So in a lot of ways, branding really is simply about telling those stories. So how do we become a good storyteller? I like to offer these 3 easy steps. One is, first, just describe the situation or the challenge. What was the situation that you found yourself in, or the challenge that that you were faced with? Number 2, what were 2 or 3 actions that you took to address that challenge? And be very specific about what you did. And then number 3, what were the outcomes? Basically, what were the results that you achieved? And if you can keep it, like, think about people that are good storytellers. What makes them a good storyteller? Typically, they are able to grab your attention. They are able to keep your attention, and that you really are able to almost visualize what they're sharing with you, and you're feeling what they're experiencing. I find when we tell stories, our pride comes through, and also that sense of achievement of, yeah, this was what I was faced with. These are the steps I took. These are the things I did. And this is what the outcomes were. And it's such a great way of showcasing who you are and what you're capable of. And you do it in the form of a story. Not only do people remember it, it's more memorable, but you feel really good sharing it. So I want to give you that challenge moving forward. Think of an accomplishment for which you're very proud and start to craft your story. Think about those 3 steps. Okay, so what was the situation? What were some actions I took to address it? And then what was the outcome that we achieved? And I say we because a lot of times your story will include other people. And and you want to make sure that your brand is reflected in that story. So, for my friend who said her brand is "I get things done," her story is going to reflect that. It's going to be loud and clear. It's going to be very much a standout in her story. And so you want to practice. So craft your story and then practice telling it. And, I might even throw another challenge out to you this week. Maybe find a buddy, a partner that you can practice your storytelling with each other so that you just get comfortable telling stories. And you will find that it is a great way to celebrate what you've achieved. And it's a great way to share it in a way that is marketing yourself. That's what marketing is. That's what storytelling is. It's marketing yourself and what you've achieved. And the more comfortable you get with it, the more frequently you can improvise as well, depending on who your audience is. If you're in a job interview, and you're speaking to maybe the HR person who's interviewing you first, you might improvise your story a little bit differently for that individual versus if you're speaking to someone that's going to hire you, in their in a cybersecurity role, who's going to be looking for different things from you. So you can improvise your story too, but you really want to get grounded and confident in who you are, what you bring, what you want, and showcase that in the form of storytelling. And so what does this all really mean? It's all about finding and being your best authentic self. It's about building meaningful, mutually rewarding relationships so that, once again, you are of service to other people. People remember you. People want to engage with you. They think of you as someone who's a go-to person, who excels in what they do in the field that you're in. And it's about being ready and able to seize opportunities when they present themselves. And sometimes we have to initiate them or go after them. And sometimes they come to us unexpectedly. And it's about influencing effectively, because what are you trying to do when you're in a job interview? You're trying to influence that person, right? To be convinced that you're the best person for the job. And or when you are gainfully employed, you want to constantly be influencing other people you're working with to partner with you, to persuade them, to believe you and be credible around what you're doing and the role that you're in. It's all about influencing. And ultimately, when we do all of this, it's about owning our career, being in the driver's seat. You don't want to be in the back seat going along for the ride when it comes to managing your career. You want to own it and be the lead architect of where you take it and how you manage it. So I want to ask, see if there's any other questions, and I'm going to give another challenge to everybody before we finish off. But any questions, Brad?
I'm just seeing a lot of chat. This is really inspiring. Folks are appreciating your emphasis on being authentic, and not trying to kind of sell yourself as somebody that you're not. I think that's a pretty common thing, especially these days in the land of social media and sometimes misrepresentation on those platforms and things like that. So a lot of folks really appreciating the thought exercise earlier around the future conference topic. Really good stuff coming in through the chat. No questions though.
Great. Okay, wonderful. I'm glad to hear all that. And so as we get to the last few minutes here, whenever you attend anything like this, it's only as good as what you do afterwards, right? So I always like to offer a challenge of make a commitment to yourself. So take a piece of paper and commit to 2 actions you plan to take after tonight, whether it's throughout this week or beyond. And that could be what you might say is, all right, I'm going to start journaling, or I'm going to complete the personal brand due diligence worksheet. And again, there's also an article that I shared as a handout that gives a little bit of a summary on the 3 Ps that I talked about. So it's about marketing yourself. And then there's the personal brand due diligence worksheet and the personal brand statement worksheet. So maybe that's a commitment you're going to make, that I'm going to work on these worksheets. Or maybe a commitment you're going to make is I am going to ask for feedback from other people around what do they see as my strengths, or what do they see as areas I could develop further. Or maybe another commitment you're going to make is I'm going to update my resume. I'm assuming maybe you already have updated resumes, or maybe another commitment is going to be that I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile. And, that's a really important thing. I always say you're better off if you're not going to keep your LinkedIn profile really robust, you're better off not having one. It's better to just always keep it active. And when you do post on LinkedIn, share thought leadership. Share what you learned this week. That's people love that. It's about taking what they take away from you. So think of a couple of things you're comfortable committing to and write them down, and then find a partner that you share those commitments with. Maybe you're going to practice your storytelling. And then in a month, follow up with each other, because we tend to be a little more accountable when we have a buddy to be accountable to. We want to be accountable to ourselves, and that's where the discipline comes in. We really have to be disciplined to follow through. But right now, find a partner as well, because that will help you to be even more accountable. And then see how you do in a month and follow up with each other. And this is everything we've talked about, I'm hoping are things that you will put into practice and practice throughout your career, not only at a point when you're looking for a job, but practice it all the way throughout your career. Because these are really strong, I don't want to say habits, I want to say practices that we want to get very routine with, because they really can make a difference in managing our careers. And so last quote I'm going to leave with you. I love what Oprah says, especially in the middle here. The best way to succeed is discover what you love and then find a way to offer it to others in the form of service. And as I mentioned earlier, really branding is all about how do we show up and being of service to others and how they receive us. And lastly, I'm just going to say, share some resources here, some books that you might find helpful that, um, that can be very inspiring in terms of this whole process of the three Ps when we're doing our prep and our packaging and presentation. But I will leave you with that list of resources as well. But otherwise, unless there's any other questions, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to hearing your additional thoughts and best of luck to all of you.
Rita, this has been excellent. There is another question or two in the chat if you don't mind spending a couple more minutes with us. One of them that came in, are there anything that you would recommend we avoid putting on something like our LinkedIn or on a web page that sort of speaks about our personal brand? Common pitfalls or kind of traps that you think that folks should know about. May not be necessary or may kind of deliver the wrong message?
Gee, that's a good question. I think the one thing I guess I would say to kind of stay away from is not to use too many buzzwords, and also not to have your LinkedIn profile or even your resume read like a job description. It's good to include some specific accomplishments or achievements. So things that you want to highlight on your resume and your LinkedIn profile that really indicate specifics about, what you've done or skills that you have. And then the other thing with LinkedIn that I would say is, well, kind of what I already said. I think a real pitfall is to have nothing on there. I make sure it's substantive. Don't and to have a good picture. That's another thing. To have a professional picture, not one that maybe was, like cropped from something on your phone or and not that you have to all go out and get professional headshots taken, but just make sure that it's a professional looking picture that and keep it updated. Sometimes people have pictures that are very old as well. So yeah, those are just a couple of quick things that come to mind.
Yeah, that was great. Well, Rita, you are a true professional. Tonight has been so inspiring. I loved a lot of your comments around the suggestions for journaling, and just kind of spending a couple of minutes, at the end of every day or at the beginning of every day, just kind of reviewing, what you did, what you learned, who you talked to, and what that interaction was like. And let that kind of inspire the following day or the following weeks. So that was really cool. A lot of really tangible tips, especially for folks kind of with different skill sets and different personality characteristics around the networking piece. Talking about, if kind of your wheelhouse is more the one-on-one, sort of let's grab a coffee or let's meet over, a Zoom. Such good advice. And I have to agree with you. I love it when folks, even if I haven't talked to them in a while, reach out and just say, hey, I read this article and I thought you might like it. It totally makes my day. And I always write them back and say, what a treat to see your name pop up. Thanks so much for thinking of me. Loved the article. Thanks for sharing. So all really, really, really wonderful tips, folks. So certainly, take Rita's words to heart. And I would very much encourage you to engage with Rita via Brella. Even if you don't catch her live, Rita will see all of the chat in Brella. If you reach out to her, if you network with her, you can try and find some time for the two of you to connect. Either within Brella. It looks like she has quite a bit of contact information down at the bottom of the screen as well. So Rita, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for preparing such a wonderful presentation and for your contributions to our Ignite Cyber Career Series.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And again, lots of luck to everybody. Enjoy.
Wonderful. Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to share the screen from you.
Okay, great.
And we are just going to wrap up. So, folks, that concludes tonight's session with Rita. As I mentioned, certainly encourage you to pop by Rita's booth, Umbrella, engage with Rita on any of the channels that she's made available to you. I know she mentioned making available via her Umbrella as well, really kind of speaking to the 3 Ps that we learned about tonight. And as a reminder, coming up tomorrow during our Lunch and Learn session, that's 11:30 a.m. till 12:15 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. That's the first half. We will be covering cybersecurity internships, skills, and application tips, specifically from some of our partners and colleagues over at Battelle, including one of our former athletes, actually. Chris was a senior season 1 athlete and has come back to the program as one of our junior technical mentors. And following the presentation from Battelle, we will have from 12:20 till 1 p.m. tomorrow, we will have Dr. Victor Berlin. And Dr. Berlin will be talking about get certified, get hired, claim cyber cert scholarships, and earn hands-on experience. I know there are lots of you in the crowd that are curious about the impact that obtaining certifications can have in terms of your pursuit of an internship or an apprenticeship or an entry-level job. So don't miss tomorrow's Lunch and Learn sessions. We'll be right back here in Brella. We would love to see you there. And my last comment before we wrap up tonight is our Discord channels are also open. So if you haven't seen that, certainly check out the Play Cyber Global League Discord. There is a specific set of channels all built around our Ignite Career series. Drop some memes, ask some questions, answer some questions, share your LinkedIn profile. Take advantage of all of the wonderful tips and tricks that Rita shared tonight, and keep it authentic. I just love that. It's going to be my word for the day, and I can't wait to start journaling on that theme. So Rita, one last thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. All of you in the audience, really appreciate you joining us tonight as well. And have a wonderful rest of your evening. Y'all take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.